Hello and welcome to Celebrate Freedom TV. I'm your host, Marquette Leggett, and I'm ecstatic that you have chosen to tune in with us again today at 10 a.m. Look, we have a fabulous show for you today. But look, I need to do one thing for me. Right now, I need to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. It don't cost you anything to like and subscribe. Your subscription will definitely be a blessing. So go like and subscribe at Celebrate Freedom TV. Listen, as I said before, stay connected. You can find us on all social media platforms at Celebrate Freedom TV. All right. So without further ado, I need you to also go follow me at Light Factory, okay? If you're not doing anything, which you're not, other than watching this show, you go follow me right now. Just jump on over to that page and go to Life Factory and tune in, okay? All right. So we are now going to go into our show for today. I'm excited about today's show because grief is something that we have all faced. We've all been into. We've all had to deal with it at some point, and unfortunately, grief has to deal with us understanding that there is life beyond sadness. So today we're going to talk about surviving grief. I want you to know out there, if you are watching this and you're going through grief or something like that at this time, I want you to understand there is another side of grief. There is a way out. And hopefully this testimony, this story, this show today will give you the inspiration you need to say, hey, I can get over grief. I can make it through grief. Grief will not take me out. Our special guest today is someone very dear to my heart, Miss Kristy Mclemore. She has a wonderful story about how she survived grief after a tragic death in her family. So, without further ado, we're going to jump on into this story. Let's welcome Miss Kristy Mclemore to the show. Hey, Miss Kristy.
Hello, Pastor Marquette.
Oh man, it's wonderful to see you. Great to see you. I'm so glad that you did agree to share your story on the show today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for asking me.
Okay, okay. So I'm going to move right on out of your way, and I'm going to let you have the floor. So please give us your powerful testimony of how God healed you and survived, and how you survived through grief.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to the Lord for giving me the tools over the last 5 years to survive.
Right.
My story of grief begins when my husband passed away on April the 5th, 2017.
Mm.
Um, the day that he passed away, my world came crashing down. There was complete and utter devastation in my world. I
Wow.
had all of a sudden I was a widow at 42. I'm sorry, widow at 44,
Mm-hmm.
single mom. I was a homemaker. My husband was the breadwinner of our home. We owned a business, and all of a sudden, I didn't have my best friend with me.
Wow.
And that was the darkest time of my life.
Right.
So my story begins there. I can tell you that it was on a Wednesday when he passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in a tremendous storm was blowing through Atlanta. We were in the hospital up in Atlanta, and
Mm-hmm.
a tremendous storm was blowing through to the point where it was knocking out the generators and the power and the generators to the hospital that we were at. It was such an incredible storm, but it did not match the storm that was brewing inside of me.
Wow.
That storm that was brewing inside of me would go on for some time, but God,
Wow.
but God. So I survived,
Mm-hmm.
and the Lord has gone on to teach me how to thrive.
Mm.
And now I'm standing before you, or actually sitting before you. I've gone from a place of healing to a
Mm-hmm.
place of wholeness
Mm-hmm.
to where the Lord is now showing me it's time to live life more abundantly.
Wow.
Before I go into anything, I want to take a brief moment right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to share with anyone that has that is walking through
Mm-hmm.
this journey of grief, if whether it's just started, just had the loss, or if it's been some time,
Mm-hmm.
or if you found yourself stuck and it's been many years, through the grace of God, there is life more abundantly.
Wow. That's right.
Though you may not see it and feel it today, because Lord knows I didn't feel it then. My everything about my life ended when he
Mm.
passed away.
Wow.
My dreams,
Right.
every dream that we had, everything that we were planning to do, everything. When I say everything, every fiber of my being, Pastor
Right.
Mark,
Right.
died when he died.
Wow.
So, in the process of this, the first thing you do is you come home, and you come home to a home that no longer feels like a home.
Right.
And so it was I mean, that night that he passed away, the former church that we went to, they all come to our house.
Mm-hmm.
And I all of a sudden was in a house that was full of people,
Mm-hmm.
but yet I was completely alone.
Wow.
Because at that moment in time, there was nobody within the circle, not even just the circle of our church, but the circle of our community,
Mm-hmm.
who had experienced becoming a widow at such a young age. I
Right.
was 44. He was 42 when he passed away.
Wow.
Um, my mother had gone through it because my father had passed away, and I had
Mm-hmm.
friends that their parents had passed or grandparents were, but nobody was able to really help me in that moment.
Right. No one could really relate in
No
that
one
way
could
that
really
you
relate.
needed to be related to. Right.
No, and
Mm-hmm.
let me say two things right here, because it's coming to my mind. In that time when you've experienced a great loss, be careful not to allow yourself to get hurt or offended by others when they either push you away or you push them away or what. Most of the time, people don't know that they have a heart, they want to minister, or they want to just talk, they want to do something, but most of the time people don't know how to express
Right.
when they know there's been such great loss. And
Right.
I found that people would just kind of, they wanted to do something for it, but they simply just didn't know how.
Right. It wasn't. It wasn't that they were being,
They weren't being
distant.
ugly or
Right.
distant, being rude. They weren't doing any of those things.
Right.
But in that process, and here was part of my process, is I pushed everyone away
Wow.
because no one could give me what I wanted, and what I wanted was my husband back.
Right.
No one could give that to me. So, I knew that people were being kind-hearted. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that their spirits were in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a journey that, un, whether you want to call it fortunately or unfortunately, I had to walk it alone
Correct. Yeah.
because nobody could give you what you really want in that moment.
Wow.
So our journey began, like I said, in April of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Within 2 months, I got my first lesson in this journey of grief
Mm-hmm.
because I was watching people on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden it's summertime, and everybody is going on vacation, and they're going, having marriage proposals and baby announcements and all the things that happen in a normal life.
Right.
And I realized right then that people would move on with their life, but I was stuck in what I called at that time the seventh circle of hell, because that's what it really felt
Say that again. You went out a little bit. It was a seven. What now?
like. I felt like it was the seventh circle of hell
Wow. Got you.
because there was such desolation, and
Mm-hmm.
there was such, and as people began to, over the next 2 or 3 months after that,
Mm-hmm.
would have people that would want to talk to me and, how are you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Is there
Right.
anything we can do? you got to where you didn't want to talk. You didn't want people to ask that question, how you doing? Because
Right.
you really don't want to know, but it's like, but one of the things I learned is that I had to be honest.
Hmm.
I had to be truthful, and I had to be, I couldn't tell you I was okay because I wasn't okay.
Right.
So I found myself telling people, I'm here.
Mm.
I'm here.
Mm.
Because that's all I can be is I'm here.
Hmm.
And as time moved forward, I was able to go, I'm okay.
Hmm.
And then as time moved forward, I was good.
Mm.
Not to skip too forward in my story, but it's only been in the last 6 months to a year that I can look at you and say, I'm great.
Mm.
It's a continued process.
Correct.
But I want to talk about what happened in that process
Hmm.
to get me to the place that I am. There's two things that I want to say real quickly.
Hmm.
It's one, is the face of grief is different for everyone.
Wow.
Oh,
The face of grief
how
is
do I?
different for everyone.
Hang on, my screen just. Can you still see me?
I can. Hmm.
Okay, I can't see anything. Um. Okay. The face of grief is different for everyone.
Uh huh.
Not everyone is the same.
Uh huh.
Um. There we go. Not everyone is the same.
Hmm.
So one person's process may be totally different than another person's
Right.
process.
Right.
So my time frame is going to be different from somebody else's time frame.
Absolutely.
So the first thing I want people to understand is that nobody's journey is the same.
Correct.
So if somebody, let's just use me for example.
Mhm.
So, my journey's been 5 years, and if somebody loses their spouse and they remarry in a year from
Hmm.
losing their spouse, their journey's different than mine. So
Exactly.
we have to be careful that we don't throw any kind of judgment or shame
Hmm.
on someone who moving at a different speed.
Correct.
That's the first thing I want people to really understand. And the second thing I want that people to understand, and I hope that they can get this through my story and through my testimony, is that you do not have to get stuck in your grief.
Right.
So let me go back to my story.
Hmm.
6 months, I'm now up to the 6 month point after my husband had passed away.
Hmm.
And at this point, the pain of his passing was so incredibly deep. I pushed everyone away.
Hmm.
We kind of went to church, but we didn't really go because I couldn't function. It was
I
all
can
I
imagine.
had. It was all I had to function to be able to get my children up to take them to school.
Right.
But we had to continue forward. They had to go to school. We have to move forward somehow.
Right. Right.
So it's about 6 months afterwards, and I was in prayer one day and I don't think I was really in prayer. I think I was in a mixture of a pity party
Mm.
and just moaning in desperation.
Hmm.
But I asked the Lord that day, how could I possibly kill myself and not go to hell?
Wow.
Now here's the truth behind that. I didn't want to take my life.
Right.
I wanted to take the pain away.
Away.
I couldn't handle the physicality of the pain
Wow.
any longer. I was at my wit's end. And the Holy
I
Spirit
think
spoke to me.
I think right there, that's a good point that you're making right there. And I think that at the head of suicide, because suicide is very prominent in people
It
who
is.
are facing grief. You
And
know,
it's not, I can say for me, it wasn't that I wanted to take my life.
right.
I just wanted the pain to stop.
And I felt right there to tell somebody right now, who may be listening to this story and listening. Just remember, there's a difference between releasing the pain and losing your life.
Correct.
And just be encouraged that separating the pain will make life better. Will make
Correct.
life better. There are ways around taking your life. Okay.
Correct.
I really felt that real strong. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So in the process of asking him that question, he spoke two words to me. And those were the names of my children, Alex and Lainey. And
Wow.
I kind of snapped,
Hmm.
and I was like, no, I don't want, because I couldn't hurt them any more than they were.
Exactly. Exactly.
But what the Lord said next to me is what began the healing process in my journey.
Hmm.
The Lord asked me, he said, do you want to know who I am? And I sat, I was like, what are you talking about? I know who you are. I've been in church all my life. I was raised in church. I was a minister. I taught. I did. And he kind of stopped me. He said, no, do you want to know who I am? And the thought hit me.
Hmm.
And I crinkled my nose and I went, well, yeah. But I know. And he said, no, you know the church. You know the God the church teaches.
Right.
You want to know who I am.
Mm.
And is there a difference? And he goes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to back up here and tell you that 2 days before Shannon took his last breath, the Lord gave me a word. And he gave me a scripture. It's be still and know that I am God.
Wow.
And at that time, I couldn't understand. How am I supposed to be still? I'm in the fight of my life. Because
Right.
my husband's about to leave this planet. How
Right.
do you be still
During a time like that?
during a time like that?
Wow.
It didn't register here, and it certainly wasn't registering here.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to October of 2017, and I'm having this conversation with God. And the first thing he said to me, the first thing he began to show me in this time of my journey, was he told me, he said, you put your husband first, and I was second.
Wow. So while you're grieving,
While I'm grieving,
not even when you're getting over it, or you're not even afterwards. So in the midst, you're already feeling bad. You're already grieving. You're already going through. And in the midst of your going through and this grieving process, the Lord rebukes you.
he did.
Seriously.
He did. And
Wow.
I was like, huh?
Right.
No, I didn't. And
Wow.
then he's like, yeah, you did. And then I said two words to him that I will jokingly tell people not to say this, but it's the truth. Because I looked at it, I was like, prove it. I didn't feel like that I had done that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And so he began to bring things to my remembrance of situations, and I realized that I had put Shannon first. I had made Shannon my God. And
Wow.
God took a back seat.
Wow.
So this was the first leg
Mm-hmm.
of what my journey was. It was at that moment, and I remember it so distinctly. It was that moment that I felt like for the first time I had almost like cat claws. That I was in the bottom of this pit.
Mm-hmm.
The first time in 6 months, I felt like I could put my fingers in something and grab something so I could begin to climb out.
Wow.
Of that hole. And it came from a rebuke from the Holy Spirit. So that was not an easy thing.
So let's circle back to that. Okay.
Sure.
You gained your grip back of your current reality from this world you were in through grief.
Mm-hmm.
And you were able to gain and restructure yourself and gain the initial footing that you needed through a rebuke from the Lord.
You're correct.
And you have so many people that during that time they want to blame God and they don't want to talk to God, and they're going through grieving situations, so they're they're not even hearing God.
Right.
Here, not only did you hear God, but he rebukes you, but you're open to what he's saying. And he wants you open up to what he was saying during that period of time. Then he gave you the footing again. When you were saying that, I was thinking about the disciple that said, Jesus, let me walk on the water with you.
Mm-hmm.
And as he was walking on the water, he began to sink.
Right.
And as he's sinking, Jesus grabs him before he, completely dies.
Yeah.
And he grabs him with a rebuke.
Yeah.
You took your eyes off of me. That's absolutely, it's amazing because it's so contradictory to what the world presents to us today.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't easy. And I don't want to paint this as a super spiritual type thing. It was not easy hearing those words.
I know, that's right.
It was not easy because for the first time I felt like I had disappointed God.
Wow.
But it was really the love of God that he was showing me, because it stuck with me. So from then forward, it's like, wait a minute, I can't put anything ahead of him.
Right.
Because I understand, I've already lived through that.
Right.
And I know, so that was really the beginning of this journey. And that journey has not come without, anger.
Right.
With the roller coaster of, denial that he really didn't pass away, that at any moment he's going to walk through the door. Even though the Lord was walking with me on that journey, I still went through the emotions.
Wow.
I still went through all of the times where, I would lay in bed and just kick the covers because I was so angry.
Right.
Because I was left.
Understandable.
It's very understandable.
Right.
And so the process of learning to crawl out of that black hole came with a lot of bad decisions. A lot of, here I was trying to help my two children, which that is a story all of itself, but I was trying to help them navigate a field of grief, and I couldn't even breathe.
Right.
I was having a hard time. So there was a lot of hard nights. There was a lot of very early mornings to sit in the bedroom, whatever, listening to YouTube, just having something, because all of a sudden things become silent.
Wow.
And when you walk through those moments of silence, see, there's a difference between being quiet and silence. There's a strong difference between them. And any person who lives with a quiet person in their house would know that difference. So the silence became deafening, even though I wasn't in the room. Okay.
So explain that a little bit. I like that. Go into that a little bit more. The silence of grief.
The silence of grief is all of a sudden, for me, losing my husband. Now, if I'm a parent losing a child, I can only assume the silence of grief is still there. It's just a little different.
Right.
So I'm going to use it based on what mine was with a spouse. All of a sudden, I'm laying in bed at night and I look over to the pillow next to me and nothing's there. There's no one to talk to. There's no one to, to daydream with or night dream with, or there's nothing that. Then you wake up the next morning and you look up, there's nothing there. The silence of death. You can be in a room that's crowded with 1 million people. And it's kind of like that Charlie Brown. You might even hear that. But everything is silent.
Right.
It's dead of night. There's a silence in grief that I believe the enemy will use that tool to get you to a place where you isolate. Wow. I believe that, and someone may want to contradict what I'm saying, but for me in this journey and what I've learned, I believe that when you get to a place and when that silence of grief comes in, that's when the enemy comes in to try to isolate you. Right. And the first thing you're going to say is, nobody knows what I'm going through. Right. And the truth is there are other people who do know. Right. It may be different, but for a parent that loses a child, they may walk into a bedroom that was once filled with dirty clothes all over the floor, and but there's no activity because that child's no longer here. There's a silence that comes through.
Wow, it's a silence that it's so quiet that it's loud.
It's so quiet that it's loud. Exactly.
And you're sitting and you're saying, okay, I'm in this place where I'm surrounded, but I'm still the silence. I can't take the silence. I thought about what you just said. You're in a room. It's like a parent who has lost a child. You're in a room full of clothes, but all you can hear is memories.
Exactly.
You can't tangibly see anything, but all you hear are memories.
Exactly.
And to be trapped, in a place to where the only tangible thing you have is something that you can't even, bring into reality. It stays in your mind, and you see the dancing across the room, or you see the laughing and the times that you had, and you can't bring that silence can be so overwhelming.
This is where I begin to learn. The Lord really began to, and we're probably somewhere between the 9-month and the 1-year anniversary is when I
Wow.
learned the first lesson.
Mhm.
This is where the Lord began to tell me that the art of grieving, or the act of grieving, if I could say it like that,
Right.
if not careful, becomes the tool of the enemy.
Wow.
Because it's the enemy's plan within grief is to get you stuck.
Wow.
Because if we take God at His word and what He says is true, He says that I've come to give you life, and life more abundantly.
More abundantly. That's good.
More abundantly. Life didn't stop when Shannon died.
Right.
Or let me rephrase that. Life more abundantly did not stop when Shannon died.
Correct.
Life more abundantly stops when I leave this earth and go to life, death. That's when life here abundantly stops for me.
Absolutely.
But the enemy uses the silence of grief, and he uses the doubts of grief, and he uses the destruction of grief as tools to get us stuck. And like I can tell you, and I'm sure people, and there's people all around us that have lost loved ones.
Right.
10, 20, and 30 years ago, and you say their name, and they come to a place that they're crippled with emotional sobs and whatnot, and they can't enjoy the memories of what they had because they're so crippled by that grief.
Exactly.
Not God.
Say that again. Say that again. And I don't even believe that the person who they are grieving over would desire them to do that.
No.
Right.
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'll just say this, because this is where I'm standing today, is the Lord has told me that He wants me to have victory in every area of my life. And the last place the latest place He talked about was having victory because they passed away. He said, because when Shannon passed away, he moved into the heavenly realm.
Right.
Where, he's in heaven. Is that not the ultimate victory?
Ultimate.
Ultimate place. He said he moved into victory.
Right.
But because we're still earthbound, we go through this process of grief.
Correct.
So on our moving into a 1 year, well, let me say this before I get to the 1 year. At the December 31st of 2017 was New Year's Eve, and I was with a group of people at my home. We were praying the New Year again. I then pushed everybody away, and obviously I didn't feel like celebrating anything. But I went into prayer, and we were just kind of doing the last 5 seconds into it. And I did something without having a revelation of what it was, because God was going to give that to me later. But I just did something because it just kind of felt right at the moment. It's as it was counting down, and the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When it got to the 1, I said, "Grief, you cannot go into my 2018." And then you hear the Happy New Year on TV, and then I made a step.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't tell you why I did that. Now
Mm-hmm.
later on, I could tell you because I was making a declaration that the enemy of grief could not move, could not go into 2018 with me and my family.
That's right.
Did the hurt stop? No. Did the journey stop? Did I just automatically, snap out of it? And no. But I made a declaration, and from that moment forward, I could move forward, but he could not move with me.
Uh-oh.
I didn't learn all that till later on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're coming into a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's our first year. So you've gone through all of the major milestones that you lose within that first year.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we coming up on it, and it was like, wow, I made it a year. And then, we just kept building and kept moving. And during this process of time, that first rebuke that God gave me, that wasn't the only one. There was more to come.
Uh-oh.
But what I found out was every time he showed me another layer of what he was trying to remove so that he could bring what was inside of me forward. Every time he did it, the less it felt like chastisement.
Wow.
And the more it felt like a loving father.
You are teaching right now.
And that was something that was very unexpected. And it was almost as if it was done so slowly that you really didn't realize how you were feeling during that process.
Right.
Until you were able to look back.
Right.
Okay. So we began to move forward in this process. My children and I, we moved to a new house. Kids were, we were back in school, and we were doing sports, and we were, the thing was back at church, trying to do things, and, just trying to figure out how to do life in a survival mode. And the one thing that I began to do about the year and a little after point of that was the Lord began to give me dreams again.
Wow, that's good.
And because I went about a year and a half and not having any dreams. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of dreams you dream for a future. I'm talking about the dreams you have at night.
Right.
When you're sleeping. So we would have, and these were just stepping stones. And then I realized, well, wait a minute. The things that I used to enjoy, I didn't no longer enjoy.
Oh, no.
But I was finding new things.
Right.
That I enjoyed. And throughout this process, one of the things that I realized about the 3-year mark was that everything that had made up the person that people knew me before he passed away, every fiber of my being had died. And God was recreating. Because I'll be honest with you, before Shannon passed away, I didn't love people the way that I have myself loving people now.
Right.
I was always in church. I was always, I did everything. But I was doing it out of, this is what you always did. And then it morphed into, I was doing it because it was duty.
Right.
It was no longer, and those things were things that God began to wash away as he was building up the new.
So Miss Kristy, I didn't mean to interrupt. And what are you saying is so many nuggets in what you're saying. As I'm trying to find a spot, but it's so many nuggets. I didn't want to interrupt because
you're fine.
You were hitting on the nail on the head. Unwrapping. So as we're unwrapping grief right now, do you think that a part of what makes grief very difficult is when people have literally molded their identity in what they have lost? Do you, in other words, do you, when I'm hearing you talking, you say, okay, you know, before you weren't a people's person, before you didn't really, deal with people, in that kind of way. But could it be that you had wrapped your identity so much in your husband and in the family that it didn't matter? You were fulfilled,
You're exactly right.
you know?
Yes, it is. It is a possibility. It's more than a possibility,
Right,
because when you make someone the center of your world,
right,
then you wrap everything around it.
right. Because it's
That's where God was telling me I was
right,
putting Him first and not God first. So every dream, every business proposal, every down to the things I ate, down to the things I wear, every fiber, everything
wow,
was wrapped around what I had with the person that God had given me.
wow.
And God had, I mean, God gave Shannon to me for the rest of his life,
Hmm.
but it wasn't the rest of my life.
But and it doesn't have to be bad things because
No, it wasn't bad.
y'all had a wonderful relationship,
We did.
and then
He was an amazing, God spirit filled, loving, amazing man,
right.
brilliant man. But it was where I was placing him
Mm,
that
mm,
set me up for failure.
wow.
But God.
But God, right.
But God.
Wow.
So and the story that's coming to my mind right now is Rahab,
Hmm.
and where she has lived a life that set her up for failure. But when Joshua and Caleb came to camp, there was something that switched in that situation, because she made a comment to Joshua and Caleb and says, if y'all had come 40 years earlier, the town was freaking out. I mean, paraphrasing. But she said, but we know the God you serve
Uh-huh.
is great. I mean, we're in fear of him. When
Right.
she said that, it changed the trajectory of her life,
Right.
where she went from being a woman who had done all these things to set her life up for failure
Hmm.
to being the lineage of Jesus Christ.
That's good.
Okay, so where I had set up, now I'm not, you know, making parallels to my life in Rahab, but I had set myself up for some failures because I had made it about me. I made
Wow.
it about me. And God was saying, you know what? I need you to make it about Him so that I can move in you and heal you and bring you to a place of wholeness so that I can use you.
It's so amazing what you're talking about because it's like I'm looking at a whole, a deeper definition of grief than what we have looked at. You know, when you unwrap the layers of grief and you find yourself initially shocked because you've lost something, and it's not just because you lost something, and the enemy wants us to focus on the loss.
On the loss.
Because if we ever focused on what we were through the loss, or what we were, or why we're being impacted, then maybe some of us will realize that we have made people gods in our lives. And some
Exactly.
of us will say, okay, wait a minute. The only way that I'm going to survive this grief is to unwrap my identity and my life from around it. Because, Dr. Miles, he has a book called The Battle of Altars. And in his book, he talks about the altar of basically the altar of death, the altar of the grave, and
Yeah.
funerals.
Yeah.
And he talks about how, we can make altars. He talks about how people just, they go to funerals and they just, take me with you, take me with you, take me with you, and he speaks on how grief, causes these altars to form that all you want to do is have that person back.
Exactly.
When you actually made an altar, or you made them into a god, and now you have to unwrap from your identity from around this altar that you have created now. So you have people who are walking around who they've lost loved ones, And because they've wrapped their identity around that loved one, they don't know how to live life without that
They
loved one.
don't. And here's the other side of that is too many times people have made that altar and they're not even aware
Right.
that they made that altar.
Wow.
They just absolutely have no clue. It's not an intentional thing.
Exactly.
It's not graving out of a statue of gold as an idol. It's
Right.
not that. It's something that they've done through a process of hurt.
Mm.
I saw a Greek quote
Mhm.
years ago that says, the harder the grief, the harder the love.
Right.
And says that grief is nothing more than love that has nowhere to go.
Say that
And
again. Say that again.
grief is love that has
Nowhere to go. Wow.
Because you don't just magically stop loving that person,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a parent, whether it's a child, whether it's a spouse, no matter what. You don't just stop loving them.
Mm-hmm.
So your love has nowhere to go. It has no outlet. And if we're not careful, it becomes stagnant. When
Grief
water
is,
outlet to
wow.
go to, water becomes stagnant. And what happens to stagnant water? It dies. There's no life in it. And that's what I truly believe. I'm saying the Holy Spirit just showed me that.
I know, right? That thing sparked. That grief is love that has nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go.
Wow.
And when it becomes that stagnant water, then everything within it dies.
I mean, even God grieved. He grieved over his people because they had nowhere. If you ever notice, God never grieved over Jesus.
No.
He never grieved over Jesus. He grieved over man. Mm-hmm. He loved us. And he grieved the entire Old Testament over man because man was just, they were killing their direction and their direct line to him. And he grieved because he couldn't release his love.
No.
He had to, it's so much in what you just said. He couldn't release his love. He couldn't say, okay, I want to love you. So this is all you have to do, to receive my love.
Receive it.
But he grieved because he had nowhere to take his love. But then he sent his son.
Right.
And that son became the alleyway for the water. That son now, said, okay, I'm going to send my love through my son. And now I have somewhere to place it so that we will always and can always stay in right standings with him. Powerful.
Right.
Continue.
One of the things in this process of journey about the 2-year mark was I began to read. One day I was reading Joshua 1. And I was reading out of an Amplified Bible. And at the bottom of the Bible, it's got some notes and different things in it. And Joshua 1, it starts out saying, and Moses died. And God told Joshua to tell the children of Israel, okay, it's time to get up and move forward. Mm-hmm. So I looked down at the bottom of the notes, and what I realized is that from the time Joshua 1 was written, or from the time that this was told to them, and the difference between when Moses died was only 30 days. And I went to God and I said, God, wait a minute. You're telling these people it's time to get up and move forward, and it's only 30 days. I was like, God, I couldn't even breathe straight.
Wow, what revelation!
And the Lord just began to show me and begin to really, and it was about I think this was about the 3-year mark. I said 2 earlier, but I think it's the 3-year mark. This is where the Lord really began to push me into phases of healing, because He was showing me, Kristy, I never could find the word grief in the Bible, but I could find places of sorrow, and I could find places of mourning.
Right.
But I could not find the word grief.
Right.
And He told me, He says, I gave him 30 days. That was enough. That was time to move forward. It was time to pick up. I had things I needed them to do. It was time to go to the next place they were going. They're going to go to Jericho. That was where God was like, that's where they were going. So in that process of learning how to pick up and move forward,
Mm-hmm.
the Lord just began to drop nuggets and just drop so many things. But He was showing me that, you know what, in His time, the Bible says that He redeems the time. He will redeem the time that the enemies tried to take from someone.
Wow.
And I really feel this right now by the Holy Spirit.
Go ahead and speak.
Because somebody's watching this, and you
Uh-huh.
may have sat there and really realized that, oh, wait a minute, so and so passed away 15 years ago, and I've been through all of this. Do not allow the enemy to make you feel like that you've lost time. God will redeem the time
Mm.
that you have gone through. But it's about getting you to a place where you realize that God says, I've got more.
Right.
Yes, I understand that it'll
We can still see you though.
okay.
Hey, that's one of the beauties of live.
It is.
We
There
can
we
still
go.
see you though.
Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. That's why it's live. It all happens right now.
I know. But you know what? We're not going to let the enemy to disrupt this here and there.
Exactly.
But I don't want somebody to feel like that they've lost all of this time.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so fast forward, we're now, and you said there's going to be a part 2, so I can dive a lot deeper in this.
Right.
But Father's Day is coming up this Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And a year ago, Father's Day is when me and my children came to New Covenant for the first time.
Right.
And when we came there, I had just lost my mother. And it'd been a couple of months. So when we came to New Covenant, this was kind of important in here because during that time frame, God was showing me a healing. But once I came to New Covenant, we switched and went into a wholeness.
Mm.
And there's a difference there.
I was just getting ready to say it. Go ahead and go into that difference.
I want to give somebody some encouragement to understand that you can be healed, but there's a place of wholeness.
Wow.
Wholeness does not mean that you forget what happens. Wholeness means that you're walking in victory even though it happened.
Say that again. You got to say that again.
Wholeness does not mean that you forget what has happened. You forgot, you don't all of a sudden you act like, it never happened. That's not what wholeness is. Wholeness is that you walk in victory because it happened.
Wow.
Or even when it happens.
Right.
That journey of wholeness began when the Lord brought us to New Covenant. And a couple of months after we were there, Pastor Chris gave a word of prophecy in one of the Sunday morning services, and he told me that things were going to be accelerated. And I really want to say this real quickly because it took nearly 5 years to get to a place of wholeness after my husband died, but it only took one when my mother passed away.
Wow.
This is the power of what God has.
Wow.
This is what the power of what He wants to do.
Right.
So grief, if we're not careful, we can be stuck. But God says, I want to make you whole. My mind immediately goes back to the 10 lepers that came to Jesus and they worshiped Him. They gave Him praise because He healed them. 9 went away, but only one worship. And He looked at the one at worship and He says, you've been made whole. The others were healed. Their symptoms went away. See, here's what I really want people to understand, that the symptoms of grief can go away, but you can still operate and not be whole.
Right.
God says He wants you whole. Above all else, I can't think of the scripture reference right off my head, but above all else, I wish that you would prosper.
Right.
Even as your soul
prospers.
Okay. That is a place of wholeness.
Right.
So if I were to encourage anyone that's going through this journey of grief,
Mm-hmm.
is to make the decision that no matter what God says or wants, or no matter how many times He rebukes you,
Mm-hmm.
follow hard after wholeness.
Wow. And
Because it's in
say that definition of wholeness one more time.
wholeness to me,
Mm-hmm.
and what I have learned and what I have experienced, wholeness is not the absence of the event happening
Uh-huh.
or has happened. It's not you saying that, oh, are you acting like, Shannon didn't die? Are you just living life like he never existed? That's not what wholeness is. Wholeness is being in a place where you can walk in victory,
Mm.
even because, and I want to use that word, because it happened.
Mm.
And that's, I don't use that word lightly,
Mm-hmm.
because it's never something. No one wants to walk this way. No
Right.
one wants to walk. Everybody wants to live in that nice little cushy, you've been married 80 years, you've had, 4 kids, you've got 17 grandchildren, and, everybody wants that blessed life.
Right.
And God wants it for you as well.
Right.
But there are some times that there are things that happen in life.
Mm-hmm.
And as they happen, God says, I wish that your soul would prosper.
Wow.
And I believe, and Pastor Mark, I want to say this one thing, talking
Mm-hmm.
about the soul prosper. The night we were in Celebrate Freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking about the Amy. I
Mm-hmm.
can't say the other word because I'll mess it all up. And you had a picture, you and I even talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
that it was a small circle
Mm-hmm.
within a larger circle that had a larger circle.
Mm-hmm.
And the small circle was sin.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a gap about this big between the small circle and the larger circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a smaller gap between the middle circle and the bigger circle.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was sitting there watching that, the Lord showed me that the middle circle was life.
Mm-hmm.
And the outer circle was life more abundant.
Right.
And what he was showing me was that there was a wide distance between sin, the circle of sin, and the circle of life.
Mm.
But there was a shorter distance between the circle of life and the more abundant. There was a smaller distance between it. And I want to encourage anyone, whether you've gone through grief or whether you're just watching this because you love this show or
Mm-hmm.
you're great friends of ours or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever God's calling you to, He's calling you to a more abundant life.
Right.
And there's a smaller distance between the life and but it's walking in wholeness.
And on that note, as we are approaching the top of the hour, that is a great note to transition to the next phase. Even though you are going through grief, as the Holy Spirit was ministering through her, there is a shorter space between life and life more abundantly than there is between sin and life itself. There's a shorter space. And wholeness, understanding that when you're able to walk in enjoyment, in the freedom of the blessing of death, because there is a blessing in death, and understanding that this is not the last life. Exactly. And in understanding that they have gone on to a better place, and in understanding that even in this trial, the scripture says that when I am weak, that is when God is strong. As a matter of fact, weakness is a technology that is created to bring forth the power of God and to house it inside of you in that area. The revelation Miss Kristy has gotten during this trial and tribulation that she has went through surpasses anything that I have heard in the grief counseling department. And it is amazing to see and to hear her walk, and to see her walk, and to see how strong she has been in this time of turmoil. Again, I want to, as she was leading into it, I want to reiterate right now that there is a blessing. There's a shorter span or gap between life and life more abundantly than sin and life. Realize today that you are in a place and in a position for God to give you your footing back. Make the decision
Exactly.
today that yes, I was hurt. Yes, I had grief. Yes, I am in this situation, but know this: you are not alone. You are not alone. Don't be caught in that place where the enemy can speak to you and have you believe in all kinds of lies, that God doesn't love you and God doesn't care and God wants you to suffer and God wants you to do all these things. It is not true. Grief is present. Yes, because it is a human emotion. You can't avoid
Correct.
those emotions. Grief is present and you do have to go through it. But the thing here is you don't want to get stuck. That's the name of the game. Don't want to get stuck. Miss Kristy, listen, you have to save some of that for part two.
Okay.
This is when I tell you this is so good. There's such I'm learning as I'm listening. Deeper these levels of grief. I experience, tragedy myself, with what I call my father. He's not my biological father, but I've known him my entire adult life, and it was not easy. It wasn't easy to lose, someone that you literally, see, because like you said, you can see someone and love them so much and say, you know what, I want to model myself after them, and not realize that you actually made them an idol. And now you can't get over, it's harder to get over the loss of them when you have put your identity, it's like, well, I don't have an example now, I don't have, well, what am I going to do? Who am I going to, and he was not just a father, he was a good friend, and I can't imagine, losing a best friend. Who do you talk to now? Who do you reach out to? Like you said, you turn over, you got to get used to, if you turn, his body stops you, but now, you just keep rolling. I mean, it's a lot of different, aspects. And when we invite you back on the show again, I want to talk more about those aspects, the wholeness and I that sounds like a whole class, a whole workshop that
Yeah.
we really need to put together. We need to put together. But I do thank you for coming on the show. I have so much more I want to say, but for time constraints, I have to kind of cut it off. But I'm telling you, my soul is stirred up because we have people who are grieving every day. Depression
Yes.
is taking them over, and I believe that God is going to use this testimony to break some strongholds in that area and to reestablish His love and His glory in people's lives. So, Miss Mclemore, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you.
on the show today. I really, really appreciate you and your story. And until next time, God bless you. And I love you.
I love you too. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Wow. I am still trying to unpack everything that she just gave us. I mean, wholeness, understanding when you're walking and trying to be in wholeness, it doesn't mean that everything you have thought or felt just disappears. Having the ability to walk and still know you need to be put together. The true definition of wholeness. That was amazing. I'm going to stop, y'all, because my soul has gotten stirred up through that testimony. And I'm telling you, anybody who knows me, I love in-depth teaching and reasoning. But you know what I love about that story? That was revelation that you can't get out of a book. That was revelation that you can't read out of a book. That was revelation that came from serving God, from obeying God, from trusting God, and from moving in a direction that God said. That was information from allowing God to correct her and then seeing his love from the correction, just like a father. And I want to compel you today. Allow God to father you. Allow him to father you. I keep trying to move on, but I'm telling you, there's something right there about that. In your grieving stages, allow him to father you. You are not alone. That silence that is deafening can be filled with the voice of God and the direction of God. Allow the Spirit to move you and unstick you from your current situation. But listen, I done got all stirred up, but we have to we have to move on. We have to move on. If you have been listening to this and you say, you know what, I'm not as strong as I need to be, and I need some help. I need some folks to help me. I need some, additional help. Then I encourage you in McDonough, Georgia, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m., we have Celebrate Freedom. Now, this is our congregational meeting. We have a full-fledged mental health ministry at New Covenant. It's called Free Ministry. Celebrate Freedom is a portion of that ministry. We have 4 tiers. We have licensed therapists in one of the tiers that are volunteering their time to come and meet with you if you need it. Celebrate Freedom, that meets every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We meet in the chapel or the sanctuary, but it goes out. But at 7 p.m. And what we do, we're here to help you on your journey in this life. You're not alone. We're going to take your hand. There's a group of us, a team that I work with, and they're very, very gifted in the area of deliverance and counseling. And we are here to bring you back and to help you come back to a place of peace in your life. Okay, so please check us out. Now, I will say this. And I know that we're in a different day and time. And I know that people can say, well, I can sit at the house and I can watch TV and I can do this. But let me tell you something. As a Christian, there is a command. We shall not fail to assemble ourselves in the house of God. Why? Because there's unity in numbers. And some of you need that unity just to feel that love and that peace. And I, for one, do not mind giving a shout out to my home church. Okay. So if you are in need of a church home, all right, and you're in the metro Atlanta area or surrounding areas, my church, New Covenant, has a 9 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. service, 154 Jonesboro Road, McDonough, Georgia. You see it right there. Just come on. I'm inviting you right now. Come tomorrow. Don't even worry about it. You got 9 a.m., you have an 11:15, and you can come in. There's your invitation. All right. We love you. As always, if you need prayer, have any special requests, here is my email. I'm hitting my mic here. Here's my email right here at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so do not hesitate. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, send your requests. We would love to cover you in prayer. If you need counsel, if you need help, if you need to reach out, if you need life coaching, if you need any of that, please, 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 please send the email. We're here to cover you, okay? Also, the very, very last thing, we have gone to the YouTube channel, all right? So we need subscribers, all right? So it doesn't cost a thing. Just go to YouTube at Celebrate Freedom TV and help us push this vision, all right? So again, it has been my pleasure this morning to have you tune in to Celebrate Freedom TV, where God is moving, God is continuing to move, and God shall move. This is a talk show that reveals the healing power or the healing process, and I'm excited to be a part of your journey. I will see you next Saturday at 10 a.m., but until then, God bless you, and remember, continue to press forward.